This is Madaraja from Penez, which means to think, a show about authors, creators, and influencers who share narratives about their culture and identity. Welcome to the show. For today's segment, we are talking to one of Kansas City's living musical legends, Mother Mary Moses, formerly known as Mary Moore. Mother Mary Moses swept Kansas City streets with her soulful voice for the blues, quickly becoming the talk of the town. But her talents did not stop there. Her voice traveled as far as Europe to sing with some of the most notable blues stars such as Luther Allison himself. It was during her tour of Europe, right on stage in Pompeii, in front of a crowd, that she was exposed to a sudden epiphany. An epiphany of what she was truly meant to share for the world. And an epiphany she has followed by till this very day. Mother Mary Moses, it is so good to have you. How the heck are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm very pleased to be sitting with you and having this conversation. My time as a musician. An amazing journey in so many ways, and all of the various um, genres of music: blues, jazz, R&B, gospel, even rocking a little bit. I did it all through my journey as an entertainer and performer in music. It was really, really difficult to put me in a box because I loved it all, and I can do it all. And my personal feeling with in the entertainment business and in entertainment industry, that I would not allow myself to be marginalized or put in a box with a certain genre of music. I believe that people have hearts, and sometimes you might be in a totally jazz setting with the jazz purists, and go in another direction, do something else that has a different vibe, a different twist on it that's not jazz.
Right.
But my experience has been that they receive it. They didn't know how much they loved this other way of telling a story, with music and lyrics, So, and that was one thing I was known for, really, in retrospect, that the musicians, local musicians that I worked with, especially, I will call his name, Everett Devan, who's one of Kansas City's premier jazz B3 organists.
Oh, wow.
And they, are really rare these days to find someone that can master the B3 like Everett Devan. And I had the privilege and opportunity to work with him, for off and on for a year and a half or two with his band called Slick. And he was really one of I would say the only musician that I worked with that could keep up with my movement and changing of moods and setting the pace in the room. Because many times you go out there and you got a set program. We're going to do this song, this. But, when you get out there and you feel the audience and they need something else.
Right. So you're moving with the motion.
Yes, and so you change up, you flip the script, sort of. And a lot of musicians don't like that. It's just like, oh God, they get all fragmented and frazzled. And Everett Devan said, if you're going to play with Mary Moore, you just got to stay with her. You got to watch her and just stay with her. And it all turns out very well. And you're happy that she went the other way because we all get that experience of that moment of euphoria. With the song and the melody and all that kind of thing. The audience and the musicians, it's just a collective celebration of whatever the story is in the song, the lyric. And I really acted them out. The lyrics the story became me. I got really into the story itself, and you could feel and see whatever was saying, whatever the lyrics were saying, whether they were happy and deep or growling or celebratory, whatever. That's really kind of how I did and still like to do, you know.
And when you were touring Europe and you were in Pompeii in front of that large crowd,
Mm-hmm.
what was that epiphany that you had? What is it that spoke to you?
Well, when I first walked up into those big window, the big door, you know, that opening,
Mm-hmm.
and you look down, and there is the bleachers that goes down, and the ground, and across the yard, the ground is the stage way on the other side. And so when I walked up in there and saw that stage, there was nobody in the amphitheater. There were no people there.
Okay.
I saw it, and two other people were traveling with me, two other women. And but when I saw the stage, and I knew I had to get on it, so I started going down each step, and it seemed like I picked up speed. I heard the voices of the two women that were with me say, "What is she doing? Where's she going? Mary, what is she doing?" And I started to go a little faster and faster because all I could see was the stage, and I knew I had to get on it. And I leaped on the ground and ran across the grounds to the stage. And I didn't leap, but I got up on that stage. And by the time I got on top of that stage, and then I started to sing. Lady Sings the Blues. I had read a book called Black Pearls, and Billie Holiday and all of us Black Pearls, and realized that I was one of them.
Absolutely.
So I started to sing Lady Sings the Blues, and everything else faded into oblivion. It was just me and that song and that feeling, and I was outside of my body singing. And there was the presence of people around me holding hands and celebrating me. It was my mother, my brother, my father. There was Billie Holiday was there. I was seeing many of the women of the blues that was in that circle, and some faces that I did not recognize, but they were there rejoicing and celebrating, moving back and forth, holding hands around me, and the focus was on me. And in that moment, when I did come back to myself and realized that people were on the other side, and the bleachers had filed in, and they started to applaud. I'm coming back now, going, wow, and they started to say, more. They wanted me to sing more.
Encore.
Yeah, they did. Oh, yeah. and I actually did. I started to sing Amazing Grace. I sang it a cappella.
Oh, wow.
And, well, it was all a cappella.
Right, there's no one else on stage helping you out. No
one.
microphone.
No mic, no nothing. The design of amphitheaters is for the voice to
echo throughout.
Echo out throughout and outside, throughout the space.
Wow.
And my voice echoed, that people heard me. And interesting that John Mayall, who's the godfather of British blues, his band was on the Ultimate Rhythm and Blues cruise ship, for which I was on traveling, going to Europe. And John Mayall was one of the featured artists. He's the god of blues. He heard the blues in Mississippi, down in the Delta. He hung out with the culture, the people, the juke joints, and went back to Europe and started a band. And the Beatles and everyone else is directly connected with John Mayall. He's highly respected and regarded as embodying and embracing the blues in America, and makes me very proud that he acknowledged the culture out of which the blues comes.
Yeah.
He spent time down in the Mississippi Delta, literally in the juke joints with the black people, and really received all that it represents, because the blues is our primal scream. That's what it is. It's out of pain. It is out of struggle, survival, and one of the things that I came to learn for myself about our people who have struggled so much with racism and the whole story of the transatlantic slave trade, and the strength of our people, of survivors. And what I've come to know now and believe, that the blues says you can break my body, but you cannot break my spirit. And so embracing myself, the blues, as the living blues. So when you see me, you're looking at me coming to the grassroots. That's living blues. Yeah. You're right on the inside of it. So that's the story.
So you were on that stage, and it struck something in you, though, because when you came back,
it did. Yeah, on that stage, that's when my spirit stood up. Something inside of me stood up, and I was no longer. I no longer walked bowed down, where my spirit was bowed down apologetically for being black. My spirit stood up, and I saw myself as equal with anyone who walks the earth. Whether you're rich, poor, whatever your economic status is, whoever you are, as a human being, strip away all of that stuff. We're equal. I am your equal.
Absolutely.
So that's really what happened, and that began this journey to where I am now, because that thing started to call me.
Yeah, because I know after Europe, you became more involved in community outreach and activism with various civic organizations.
Yes, I did.
And your life today consists of giving back and spreading your knowledge and moral values with that flair of like that sense of heart and soul.
Yeah.
So, for example, you came out with Lest We Forget, and that was your first, what you call a one-woman show.
Yeah.
What was Lest We Forget about?
I returned from Europe, and when I had this awakening in Europe about my story, my history, I knew nothing about the Middle Passage. I had never heard of the Middle Passage before. I had never heard of the transatlantic slave trade in any high school. All of the history that I had studied, that was taught in elementary, junior high, or high school, about history, about American history, it wasn't in the books, and I didn't know. I was totally ignorant of my story, and realizing that I wasn't the only one that's not connected and know our story of the transatlantic slave trade and the Middle Passage and all of the stories around that. And so when I learned that, when I came back to America from France with this thing sitting in me, I actually went underground. Normally, when you go on a European tour, you can come back to any city and say, and you capitalize on that, back fresh from their European tour, and you can get, that's gigs, and that's interest in that kind of thing.
Oh, Europe.
Yeah, she just came back from Europe, and so let's go and see her. Something must be special about her.
Sure.
And so but I went underground. I felt that there was something else for me to do. I wanted to do, and I started journaling actually before I left Kansas City to go to Europe, and I continued to journal. And so this whole process had begun before I left. based on some situations in my personal life and what have you, I was journeying and trying to deal with some pain and trying to deal with things, as a mother, as a wife, as a person in America, all of that. And so in that journaling, I knew that I had to tell my story. Lest We Forget was conceived out of that desire, and I wrote that song and wrote my own play and starred in it, and it was entitled "Lest We Forget." "Lest We Forget" is the title song for the play. It was entitled "Lest We Forget: A Journey from Oppression to Triumph."
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So who was the story about?
It was really the story of that little girl, the healing, for her to try to understand her life and her story and all that she dealt with in the Deep South, the terror, the hatred, the lynchings, the fear, all of that. And the characters on the stage were my mother and my father. On one side, my mother on the other, and the other character in the storyline was the slave master himself.
Wow.
And so that was the first time I had never written a play. I was a total novice. I choose to believe that the audience got the story.
Yeah.
I think they did get it. And
so it was a story of identity and place.
Yeah, finally. It took me that long. My God, that was the beginning. I had no idea where it would take me from there. And I never released that particular song. I did record it, and by some coincidence, I met a gentleman by the name of Wayne James, who was the visionary who started the Middle Passage Monument Project in Washington, D.C. I think he came out of Howard University, comes from St. Croix, and he's a historian, and he started the Middle Passage Monument Project.
Your memory does not fail you. I don't know how you remember, college years and their age and everything. That's just crazy to me.
Oh my God! Well,
I can't even remember all that. He's that specific.
Maybe it's a gift. I don't know, but I remember details, and I can go back to little details to my very early childhood, and it really. It's not the most comfortable place all the time with my siblings.
Oh, yeah.
With me recalling things. They said, no, it wasn't. It didn't happen like that, And it's things that they don't want to feel or think about or talk about. But I remember my very first memory was when I was 10 months old.
What?
Yes.
Whoa, I find that hard to
Sitting on the
believe.
bare naked ground wearing nothing but a diaper.
Wow.
With my mother, facing my mother who was at the back of the house. With 2 number 3 galvanized tubs, scrubbing some clothes on the scrub board and singing.
You just have that vision.
I got it. It never left me.
That's amazing.
It's vivid. And where I crawled, as she was singing, and the wash pots over here with fire all around, and she was dipping clothes by there and taking across the way and putting them in the tub and scrubbing them and putting them in the next one and rinsing and they get to the line.
Yeah.
But I remember turning and crawling on top of an old rusty lid.
And how has your background affected and influenced your work?
I think in a good way. With my memory and understanding of the story, of my story, and that it's not just my story, it's our story. This story of mine is the story of Black people. And so I feel very strongly with this whole initiative and everything that I'm doing now and this body of work that I'm bringing out to the world. Under Lest We Forget, A New Way Forward, it's really a movement. It's a movement for positive change. And yet it's so not about me. I just happen to be the conduit for which it comes through as a storyteller now. And it's my story. All that I've written is weaved into my works and what have you. but it's our story. Um, the story of African Americans in America who come from the deep South and they experience all of the things that has been passed on from past generations. And lest we forget, is I want to use that song as a platform um, to carry forward this message of remembering, because we forgot. We keep forgetting. And I believe that that is directly the reason why we are where we are now as a race, as a community, as a country, as an African American community. Back, they were trying to turn the script back to where we were of terror, and that a black life doesn't matter. It didn't then. My father witnessed 9 lynchings in his lifetime.
That's awful.
And there are many other stories, untold stories that the world will never know about, out of the deep South, that I, as a little girl, young girl, was watching the fear on the faces of my mother and my father and adults around me, and trying to understand it.
You know, this is a story that many are forgetting. You're so right. Many people from my own generation don't understand that this story is still very much relevant.
We now are, headed in that direction again of oppression and all of the terrifying things that happen with black people. And I believe that I've been called to inspire others and to remind us to not forget. We got such short memories. My generation did not tell this generation. We didn't tell them our story.
Now, I have to point out one part, and that's when you said reminding us. So you're not saying that you're just reminding others, it's also a reminder to yourself.
It's a reminder to myself, yes, absolutely.
And I think that's something that's very powerful, because you're not speaking as someone who is superior to others.
Absolutely not.
It's something that you believe that we should all remember collectively as one.
Yes, totally, collectively, that we remember. That's why I say that it's so not about me.
Right.
And I feel that as a culture, as a people, collectively, all of this country, not just black people, we all Americans here. And we all need to remember what it was like when it wasn't so nice, when it wasn't good. Because, it affects us all. It affects everyone in this country, I believe. When there's injustice anywhere, that the effects of it, the non-forward movement of it, and all of the effects of how it affects the people, I believe it affects everyone in some way or another.
Absolutely.
When you're silent and not doing anything, when you're looking at it and not calling, what you see, or speaking about it, and not taking some kind of active role in making it better, is counterproductive for all of us. The division, I believe that the power of one, of being on one accord, with certain value systems of humanity, serves all of us.
Sure. No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I really couldn't. So what should people expect from, the Mother Mary Moses? What would you hope that people truly take away from your work and your efforts?
I hope that that they are inspired, that they are inspired into action, inspired enough to do something,
right?
Inspired enough to take a look at your own story and understand your own history, the stories we're not telling our children. You know, each individual, as I share my story about my father or my aunt or grandmother or whatever, you know, that it would reflect back on, they would start to reflect back on their own lineage and the stories that are inside of their own families, you know, with their grandmothers and grandfathers. I hope that it inspires them to go back and with the intention of sitting at the table or just going and being in the presence of the older ones that are still living, because we're leaving fast. You know, our generation's leaving, and so I feel a sense of urgency about this thing.
Yeah.
That start the conversation right now. Ask your grandmother, what was it like? What was her life like in the 50s or 60s or however old they may be? And the family stories that you can pass along about, you know, you might have heard the names of Uncle Johnny or Aunt Clara May. Tell the stories. That's how we keep their memories alive, is by telling the story.
Sure.
And so
Absolutely.
it is very important to keep the memory of our ancestors alive and all of those stories. That's how we keep them alive, by mentioning them and talking about them and telling little grandchildren. You know, I believe it's very important to put images and pictures of of our history on the walls. You just have one big wall. I got a wall of fame in my house.
I've seen it.
And so, you know, little kids and grandkids, 3 or 4 years old, come in and say, "Who is that?" That's your grandfather, and tell them a story about that. If you don't have them on the wall, visible, then they don't know, and they don't have the opportunity to learn the stories. So keep them before you. Keep them before you to remind you of where you come from, how you got here, and a memory. So, and never forget. So, lest we get too comfortable.
Fight for the right to be free now. Lest we forget all the nights that they ran for the North Star. Lest we forget as they walk from the east to the west, trails of tears.
Freedom.
Lest we forget the way to the camps. Didn't know their fate.
We've talked about Lest We Forget. Now, let's
Yeah.
talk about Meet Me at the Table.
Yeah.
So Meet Me at the Table was conducted in 2007, and, you know, it was aimed to lead charge and rescue America's urban youth.
Yeah.
Currently, you're releasing the second part called Back to the Table, which I know is something you're very excited about.
Yeah.
So, you
Put me
know,
down.
what can you tell us about it?
Well, let me tell you all.
Yes.
You know, Back to the Table is the umbrella
Uh-huh.
over which all of the table stuff, meet me at the table, back to the table stuff, whatever you say about the table is an initiative, and to restore family, that I hope to grow and to spread across communities in this country, of inspiring parents and families to come back to the table again, to sit at the table and dine with each other. Just simple as that. Come back to the table. All of the conversations and all of the interactions and stories and what have you inside of a family happens at the table. It is so powerful. I really do believe that it is the synergy that holds the family together. That while there is division, they are disconnected. Parents don't know what's going on with their children. They're going to school and out in the community or what have you. And when you sit at the table, which is what inspired the whole Back to the Table initiative when I look back on my life. And my oldest son, Michael, was admitted into Baker University.
Oh, wow.
The oldest of my children got, scholarship, basketball scholarship, but he was really smart. In the second year, he said, "I want to focus on academics." thank you. And so, but when he first entered into Baker University, the dean, I spoke with him on the phone. I can't remember what the occasion was, but he said to me, "Your son Michael," and he spoke very highly of him, and said, however many students, 1,175, he said 1,174 were of the character of your son.
Oh, wow.
You know, and he said, I was talking to Michael and I asked him, what did he miss most about being away from home? And he said, what he missed most were the sessions at the table.
Oh.
I was in show business. I was wearing 2 hats. I was coming home. Listen, Mary Moore did not live in my house. Mother lived in the house with 5 kids and responsibilities, and do your homework and clean up your room and wash the dishes and sweep the floor and take the trash out, kind of household that and when the dean said that to me, I thought to myself, if I had not done it, what we would do about every 3 or 4 months, when things get all out of order and the house is a mess, my room's a mess, your stuff is just disheveled in the house, with 7 people living in there. Oof. Yeah.
It's a packed house.
5 kids, packed.
Yeah.
And things would be out of order, and it would always start, the conversation would always start at the dinner table. You come home with a D+, with a C, a D, your room is a mess. And, I would start it on Michael or whoever it was I was starting on. So what's going on? Why is your room a mess? Why did you get a D? You're not doing your homework, and they would go into defense, mode of denial and snotting and crying and trying to avoid the real subject matter. But eventually we would get to the core of the problem. Eventually we get to, okay, Mom, yeah, you're right. This is what's really happened. This is what's going on. And we would get to the core, and it would pass on to the next. He said, you're right, Mom, but Kenneth, and Kenneth he would pass on to Carla, and then Sarah, and they would all go through the whole snotting and denying and crying and all that, but eventually we get to the core of what was happening. And each time we did this over the years, the sun would be coming over the horizon. Every time. We never left the table. The sun is 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. Here comes the sun, and we've been up all night. But by this time, the air is light, and everybody's throwing biscuits at each other, or joking and laughing, and it's light and lifted. And
so you didn't leave that table?
No, we did not leave it until it was resolved. Until we got everything resolved, and we get up and say, okay, go downstairs, start gathering clothes, start the dishwasher going, start the washing machine. Let's clean up the house, and everybody would just scurry and get everything back in order, and we'd be good. Until the next time, that happened like every 4 or 5 months. And when I realized that, I said, oh my God, what if I hadn't done that? Maybe I would have lost them, because that was during the time when crack and gangs were just rising and had taken over the urban core. And we were living in the urban core, and many of their friends, I said, if we hadn't done that, I probably would have lost them to the streets, if I hadn't stayed connected to them. And that's where I started to write the poem. And it runs about 20 minutes long, and so many things happen around the table. And it took me back to my childhood at the table. We were mandatory, and all of the manners, would you pass the biscuits, please? And you didn't reach across anybody. And my father sitting at the head, and we all looking at just that rigid, with this ominous man, so. And then I started to look into, and I did research about, because families aren't sitting at the table with their children anymore in this modern day world. And some of the things that I stumbled upon in looking at and studying that statistics is that parents who commit to 4 to 5 nights a week of sitting present at the table with their children, that those children are 75 to 80% less likely to get involved in gangs and drugs. They are 75% more likely to graduate from college and get graduate from high school and get a college degree. And it's really not the quantity of time that is so important, but the quality of time of being fully
Right, of
present
course.
with your cell phones off and fully present with your child and say,
Mhm.
how are you feeling? What's going on in your life? And they know that you care. It's like a soft place to fall. And they can open up to you and really share what's actually going on in their lives and feel safe and confident, and trust is developed in that. My God, you really want to have the trust of your 13-year-old daughter who's coming into
Oh,
adolescence,
sure.
that she would share with you all her little secrets,
Mhm.
you know, and the males as well. So I feel that the table, I really want to inspire people to go back to the table, reprioritize your time, make time.
Mhm.
It's that important, and the future of your children, your family, rests on how much time, quality time, you spend with your children in the heart space of fully present and listening
With care.
with
and
care
time.
and knowing what's going on in their lives and helping them to understand life and this world that they're living in right now. It's totally important. So back to the table initiative, and Meet Me at the Table is Mother Moses.
Mhm.
Is a group of poems and a script that
Mhm.
was written out of that poem. With her, she's an older woman. She's funny. She's she's a grandmother that everybody wants to have, I
Okay.
believe. And yeah, so Meet Me at the Table, um, which will be a book in the form of a book
Mhm.
with other poems. It's a Meet Me at the Table, a book of poetry and reflections, are actually essays, short essays, and poems that I've written out of my own healing experiences and what have you.
Sure.
And along with that, now with the CD, I have a CD that is Mother Moses Speaks, the Master's Piece, and it's around that same. Some of the poems that are are in the book. So it's kind of a couple. It's a package.
Okay.
You get to hear some of the poems that I've written that are in the book. On the page, you'll hear the voice of Mother Moses reciting them with jazz and behind it that brings it to life. I am so excited and exhilarated about this.
Oh.
Because of one thing that I've learned in this life, in these 73 years, is that you cannot bark and guilt people into changing.
Repeat that, please. Say it one more time.
You cannot bark and guilt people into changing.
Absolutely.
The barking.
Mhm.
We're already guilty. They shut down, the walls start to go up around their heads and their ears, and their hearing fades into the distance, and all the words that you're barking at and guilting, they fall flat on the floor. They don't go into the heart. But when you want to inspire people, I believe the key is inspiring them. Because when a person gets inspired, they're going to do something. Plant the seed and they get inspired, and that light comes on, and they get a vision of a better life, of something in another direction. And you get up and start in that direction, one step at a time. Let me tell you, change is hard work.
Mhm.
This journey that I have been on for the last 20 some years to this place now, where I have turned the page. I have turned the page. Was pain, listen, change is hard work. And I walked through every painful step of the healing process. It was painful, and my gosh, yeah. And you're gonna fall down. You're gonna hit walls. You're gonna stumble when you're trying to go in another direction. You're gonna fall, but when you're inspired, you're gonna get back up and go back at it again. There's no way you're going back there when you get inspired. So my target market, is the heart. Everybody has one. So I go for the heart, and that's where change begins, in the heart. When you start to reflect and all the things start twirling, and you start dreaming and think about your life and where you are and what we want better. You want a better life, and how am I going to get there? and you start going in that direction when you're inspired. Can we please stop the barking? Oh my God.
Let's stop it right here, right now. You and I. Well, Mother Mary Moses, it is always a pleasure to hear from you. Your soul just irradiates through your words. So thank you. Thank you for being here.
Oh.
And please be sure to check out Moses' latest show, Back to the Table, for a chance to be enlightened.
You will be looking out on YouTube and Facebook and all of the
Oh, yeah. You're hit.
marketing of Mother Moses, which she's just rolling out to the world. So keep your eyes out.
Well,
Okay.
you guys heard it.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. To listen to more creatives and influencers, visit www.penez.com.